And I definitely have emphasized work way too much at various points in my life. I did want to mention, I'm going to reach down off camera for a moment.
Yeah.
This is one of my stress relievers. I have these 30-pound weights. So I have two of them below my desk. However, the challenge is they're like under the desk, and I have to remind myself that they exist. If I am just having like even 5 minutes in between meetings, just pulling these out and doing a couple of curls.
I'm going to go downstairs and get mine. And bring them up. I am so going to do that. I love that.
Welcome to Leadership Disrupted. This is Dan Rust. And today I have with us Sonia McDonald. Sonia is the CEO and founder of LeadershipHQ and McDonald Inc. She is a leading keynote speaker, leadership advisor, and award-winning author hailing from Brisbane, Australia. Her books, Leadership Attitude, Just Rocket, and First Comes Courage, are taking the world by storm. And she is an in-demand coach, facilitator, keynote speaker, and business advisor. And probably most importantly, she's just a really fun, interesting person to have conversations with. Sonia and I, we've talked about what our focus is going to be today, which I think is a really interesting topic: leadership stress. And I think it's a topic that leaders don't have a chance to talk about enough of. And so, first of all, Sonia, welcome from Brisbane. I'm joining the podcast from Jamestown, North Dakota, right smack in the geographic center of the United States. So it is great to see you. And first of all, in terms of my introduction, is there any additional color commentary or any gaps you would love to fill, just so we have a chance to know who you are?
That's a great question. It's always interesting when someone is reading about you. I think some of the things I would love, and I think it's something that we should all be talking about, is what makes us who we are and what brings us joy. And I think elements of what brings me joy, and I'd love to talk about what brings you joy as well, because that is really important when it comes to managing or how we see stress. Is I'm a mum. I'm also a crazy average painter who's getting much better. Also, I'm Australia's second best op shopper. There's no award for that. And also, what else would I say? I'm a hiker, bike rider. I've got an electric bike. I have a beautiful cat called Lulu who's sitting next to me, so she might pop in. So that's kind of like what makes me who I am, really. I love to write. I love to dance. I love to paint, and I love to create and build awesome, amazing, great leaders and leadership.
So, okay, I have to ask, you can't say this without me following up. Any chance that the painting behind you is one of your, as you describe it, crazy average paintings?
It is one of mine, yes.
Excellent. Okay. So at least we have a tiny little thumbnail view of your painting. So maybe we'll explore that as a topic at some point in the future. I'm someone who I don't paint as any sort of consistent effort, but there was a point when within our house I wanted some original paintings, and this goes back a few years, and I couldn't afford original paintings. And so I said to myself, how hard can it be? I opened up some books, I looked at some paintings, and I thought, how hard could it be? Well, it turns out it's actually quite hard and quite difficult to even come close to something that might be viewed as acceptable. So I would call myself not even average painter. I'm someone who attempted once to knock off a few wannabe paintings. So with all of that said, we were planning to talk about leadership stress. Yeah. And one of the things I find interesting is that whenever I have conversations with leadership development folks working for client organizations, the issue of stress never comes up when I'm asking. I say, tell me what's important. Tell me what issues are important. Tell me what your leadership development efforts focus on. Almost never is the topic of stress proactively brought up. But then when I say, how do you feel about the overall level of stress and tension amongst your leaders? What's your sense of that? They will say, oh, I imagine it's pretty high, or I have a sense that it's pretty high, or yes, definitely it's pretty high. We just saw your cat. And then when I ask, so are you thinking about doing anything proactive in that space? The answer will usually be, that's a good idea. But definitely not much, proactively being planned. And I think, unfortunately, it's sort of the secret challenge of leaders, because they don't necessarily have a comfort saying, I'm overwhelmed, or maybe it's not overwhelmed. Maybe I'm feeling debilitated and low energy, or maybe I'm feeling distracted, or maybe I'm feeling like I just can't get done what I need to get done. Or maybe they just aren't feeling successful. There are all sorts of variations of stress. And so I thought we would just kind of open that door and talk openly about it today. How does any of that strike you?
It strikes me very, very common, because I think, I don't know, I've had LeadershipHQ now for 17 years and worked with thousands and thousands of leaders and teams and organizations. And I actually feel, particularly in the last few years, stress has become quite a more prominent topic. The overwhelm, the stress, the busyness. I think it's becoming the common theme. It's becoming the common conversation. And like the kind of the overwhelm of doing so much and wanting to do so much is becoming, I don't know, it's becoming really worrying, particularly when, I speak to so many people and I'm like, oh, I'm so busy. And even they say to me, oh, you must be so busy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I work really hard, and I just don't use that word busy. But everyone seems really, really busy, and therefore we're not connecting, we're not taking care of ourselves.
And I do think there's a convergence of actual stress, and stressors are increasing. And at the same time, it's becoming a little more politically okay to mention your mental health. It's a little more okay. Maybe not as much for leaders. I had a gentleman 2 weeks ago. He was in our conversation. He was telling me about how surprised he is that his direct reports and people in his organization, particularly he said the younger employees, but people are more comfortable coming to him to say, hey, I need a mental health day, or I have this thing going on in my life, and I need to address it. And he said when he grew up in the business, that was just not something you mentioned, not something you talked about. It was something you just dealt with on your own. And he said, on the one hand, I'm glad that people are comfortable talking about that more. But he said on the other side, I'm not sure what to do about it, other than, I try to be supportive. But it is a little nerve inducing when someone has an issue and you feel like you want to coach, you want to help, you want to be a mentor, and you're not sure what to do with that. And then I asked him, well, what about your own mental and emotional state? How are you feeling about that? And he paused for a long second, and he said, no one has asked. And I'll tell you. And then we went on to have a conversation, and it was really interesting where one of his stressors was, how do you react to the stress of others? But he hadn't really felt the permission to say, let me tell you about me. Let me tell you about my issues, my situation. I will say, I think overwhelm of information is one of the core issues that is just, I'm probably a little older than you are, and I'm not going to presume to know how old you are, but I'm guessing I'm a bit older than you are. But we're in the somewhat the same range. And now I'm regretting even bringing up the issue of age, because I don't know how to do this
I
graciously.
don't know why that seems to be such an issue, because I think
Well,
it's actually a real honor. Like, I think it's I'm 53, right? Like, and I actually own that. Like, I kind of go, I get what you're saying as well. And I'm hoping you're like, oh my gosh, really? Like, but yeah, I just think,
I am, and I've got about a decade on you. So,
oh
so
wow,
we
well, you definitely don't look like you've got a decade on me.
so we worked in a time when I mean, honestly, 30 years ago, I thought things were overwhelming in terms of information. And yet it seems like decade after decade, year after year, more and more and more. And now, from the point where mobile phones became common,
Yeah,
I remember, this goes back about 20 years, my first trip to Saudi Arabia. I was shocked at the number of iPhones in the hands of women with burqas, in hands of everyone. It was Everyone was connected all the time. Wherever we went, there were iPhones, and I realized this is truly a global phenomenon. And with everyone connected all the time, of course it's going to be overwhelming. At a certain point, your mind just can't process that much information.
it's interesting that you say that though. Like, we're so like, in terms of mobile phones, are you there? We're so connected, but in saying that, we're so disconnected from each other. Like, we're not really, and I think that's what's causing us stress as well, is that even though we've got this ability to be connected to so much information and so much, gosh, everything, like in terms of what's going on around the world, and we're able to instantly be able to like reach out to people, reach out to get information, we're not connecting enough. We're not
Mm.
actually, we're human, we're connection machines. Like, humans, this is what we're built for, to
Yeah.
connect, but we're actually not connecting like you and I are connecting now. And this is why I love having conversations like this, because every time I find I have a wonderful conversation like we are now, it builds so many beautiful chemicals in my body. It makes me feel really good. I've got all this dopamine, and this is what we need to be doing more. We actually need to be connecting a lot more like this. And we also need to be looking at how are we using our devices, like an iPad or an iPhone or a smartphone, because is that something that's causing us a lot more stress than we need in our lives? Like, it's like, are we putting our phone down when we're connecting with someone in a restaurant or having a coffee? So are we being smart about the smartphones and our iPhones, etc.? So yeah.
Well, and in your work as a leadership coach, as you consult with businesses, do you do most of your work with senior leaders, with mid-level leaders, early stage, or what some people call emerging leaders? Is there a particular area of most common focus?
I'd have to say it's probably mid-level emerging leaders, which I love. That's our sweet spot. I happen to really love working with the emerging leaders, probably mostly your Gen Zs, millennials,
Mhm.
Gen Ys. We still do work with the Gen Xs and Gen Ys, but I'd have to say the future generations are a lot more open and have a growth
Yeah.
mindset around the stuff that we love to teach and coach and inspire them in, like around human skills and leadership skills. However, and they're also, I think, a lot more cognizant around life and balance. So I'd have to say, in the 17 years I've been doing this, it's very different today than it would be, say, even a decade ago, of me coaching and delivering leadership programs. Really didn't talk about stress a decade ago. We didn't really talk about resilience or grit or what happens with the brain under stress and things. Whereas today, it seems to be a real focal point of our leadership programs, is how to help leaders or future leaders be more effective in terms of self, but also effective in leading their people, but what does that look like when it comes to navigating balance and happiness and stress, like, you know, those sort of things. I ran a workshop a few weeks ago, Dan, and I couldn't believe it. They actually told me they wanted me to teach a group of, and I'd have to say they were probably mostly Gen X's, maybe a few of the future generations. They didn't want me to use the word stress. They said, don't use the word stress. Is there any other word that you can use other than stress to run this workshop?
And why did they not want to use that word?
Because everyone was stressed and they felt that the word stress would make them feel more stressed. And I was like, okay.
Let's call it roses.
Yeah.
That'll make it better.
So I did use the word stress.
That is fascinating, because I do think that the first step, if there's a process, the first step is acknowledging it and talking about it, and not making it a forbidden word or a forbidden topic. Because if you, this, if it's, what's the word? Yeah, if you deny it, if you're in denial about the reality of a situation, you're not going to be able to address it. I would rather embrace the brutal reality that I had a group of engineers in Canada. They worked for a power plant, and we had done some work with them in advance. And when we were facilitating a workshop with them, part of the focus of the workshop was the engagement level of these employees, because the larger group was having a very high turnover rate, and the organization wanted to determine what is causing this high turnover rate. And so I said, let's, in a kind of a cone of protection, cone of confidentiality, let's just talk about the brutal reality of your work. Why do you think people are leaving? And their first question was, what do you mean by confidentiality? And what several of them did not want to do was acknowledge that they are under high stress, that they feel under stress, because they felt that would have an impact on how they were perceived internally in the business. So long story short, it was an extreme situation, but we were eventually able to have a very open dialogue that was just purely about what is causing the stress, and what are the drivers of it, and what does that feel like when you wake up in the morning and the last thing you want to do is come into work. The last thing you want to do is one more day of this existence. But one of them said, I just don't like this career path anymore. I just don't want to do this anymore. But I don't, I've invested 15 or 20 years in this.
Yeah.
So, but my point, not to get us off track. My point was feeling comfortable talking about it. They did say to me afterwards, after we had about an hour-long conversation, that was not about solutioning. I said, let's not solve anything. Let's just bring it all out on the table. They all said, well, this probably doesn't help, but it feels like it helps. It feels like it's like I'm not the one alone experiencing this when I hear that, oh, it's a struggle for her and him and him and her. And yes, we should probably do something about it, but just knowing I'm not alone in this was actually very cathartic for them.
And I think that's a really wonderful point that you're making there, Dan, because I think when sometimes we do feel alone, sometimes we go, am I the only one that's feeling like this? And that's why I find, like, when we're running leadership programs, the power of the leadership programs are around that people get to connect and share, and they share vulnerabilities. And I always start the leadership workshop or our programs, each time I come in, I get everybody in a huddle and I'll come up with things like, tell me what brings you joy. I want you all to share what brings you joy, or what are you grateful for today? So I always start the program or workshop around that. And everyone feels like like they're not come in and like overwhelmed. Like, we get together and go, what are you grateful for? Like, what brings you joy? And it really starts the day beautifully. And it helps. And also, when we're talking about different challenges and issues and what is causing us anxiety and stress, it actually, again, by sharing, it produces, dopamine, oxytocin. It really helps us this is why we have so many different things, especially around mental health here in Australia. We've got something called Beyond Blue. I don't know if that's in the US, but
I have not heard of it.
Yeah, we have lots of different associations and charities that are helping people around things around mental health. And that's because we want people to share, we want people to talk about it, because many people don't talk about it because there's a bit of shame around it. But when we kind of go, hang, I'm not the only one that's feeling like this, it can be actually really powerful to be able to share and connect with other people, to go, you know what, this is how I'm feeling. And I think sometimes we try to numb feelings. We don't want to say, hey, I'm sad or I'm angry, because people kind of go, oh, I don't want to talk about that. It's like, well, it's actually, don't judge the feelings. We're humans. We have feelings. We feel happiness and anger. Like, don't judge the feelings. Share how you're feeling. I think that's really important.
For me, a little self-disclosure here. I for years carried a certain burden when I would go to business conferences, whether it was a company held conference or a client conference, where there are lots of people. You're exposed to lots of people, and oftentimes those events, they go from morning to late night, and you're expected to engage and participate and be visible, and for me in particular, those events are exhausting. I am more of an introvert. I am just someone who doesn't get energized by like exposure to hundreds of people, in a short period of time. I also get de-energized by loud music and by just whenever the environment is sort of chaotic. And so I would just fake it. I would just power my way through. Because it just felt to me like that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you need to do. And someone said to me, 2 or 3 years ago, someone said, I was at one of these events, and it was late at night. It was, to me, late at night, like 11:30, and the group they had a live band, and the live band was just playing really loud, rocking music that perhaps at a different place and time I would have really enjoyed, but I was just overwhelmed. And the person sitting next to me, she said, "You don't look like you're having a great time." And I said, "Oh, well, it's just been a long day." And I just said, my mind just tends to get overwhelmed with this. It's been a really long day. And she said, "So then why are you here?" And she said it in a way where she meant it in a very caring way. She said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, it's sort of expected." And she said, "Well, whoever is expecting that, screw them. You shouldn't be here." Those are her words, not mine. And she said, first of all, she had some empathy because she had someone in her life who was neurodiverse, and who she was very conscious of that person being overwhelmed. So it was just really an interesting moment where I had to say to myself, yeah, I don't actually have to do this. The people that might be expecting me to be here, I should feel comfortable saying there are boundaries, there are limits. And from that moment, where I felt I gave myself the comfort to say, here are my boundaries. I didn't say it, I didn't use those words, but that was essentially what I was saying, is there are certain boundaries. This is who I am, and I'm great at some things, and I have challenges elsewhere. But that was very scary. It was not an easy first time to have that kind of conversation. But it's made a huge difference. It has made a huge difference whenever we're planning major big events, and planning my participation in those events. And I don't know that leaders, even very senior leaders, are perhaps not used to advocating for themselves in that way, because we have to be at the top of the mountain. We have to be the be all, be the end all, be the strongest person in the room, so to speak. What sort of things? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's exhausting. I think those sort of expectations, and it sounds like that woman was meant to be in your life, like to come into your life to say that, to make you aware of self-care, in terms of the only way we can be great, particularly when you are in a traditional leadership space, is And maybe it is like next time you just popping in and saying hello, hi, just checking in, have a great time, and then leaving, like it's like, what do I need to do to focus on? We're so used to taking care of everybody else. How do we go about making sure that we look at our energy buckets? Where am I putting my energy? And no is a powerful word as well. It's
You bring up such a huge topic, because really, if you peel the layers away, that was the issue under my issue. I was not comfortable saying no. I was a yes person. I was a pleaser. I am a pleaser. So that hasn't changed. When someone says we have a problem, can you help solve it? My instinct is to say yes. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, I have this pile of things I've said yes to. And it took quite some time for me to get much more comfortable saying, when someone says, hey, can you review this? Can you edit this? Can you do whatever? For me to pause and think for a moment to say, well, let me just check my schedule. Let me check my capacity. Maybe it's not no, but maybe it's not now. Maybe yes, I can, but I can do it in 2 weeks, or I can do it in a week, or in some cases, the answer is actually that's no. I'm not going to be able to do that. Sorry, just not going to be able to do that. It's hard. That's hard, particularly for leaders. I think it's hard because, again, we've been rewarded for being the person who gets things done. We've been rewarded for being the go-to individual. But there comes a point at which being too much of that go-to person can be part of your the overall stress that you're experiencing in your life, I think.
Yeah, because when you say yes to something, what are you saying no to? Because and again, it's interesting you mentioned that. That's a really good point, because even though we do talk about, there's lots of conversations happening here, particularly like most of the work that we do is in Australia around stress and overwhelm and balance. And in Australia, we've done this whole right to disconnect. It's now government legislation, and where people can't approach you, or can't contact you after working hours and things
really?
like that. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I should send it to you. It's only just come out. Where like if your boss rings you at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., you have the right to not answer, and you have the right not to respond to emails. And is that still a lot of people, a lot of leaders in our leadership program are like, I've got to say yes to everything. I've got to do everything. I'm not delegating. And it's like, wow, like it's no wonder you're feeling so overwhelmed, because you're saying yes to everything. And yeah, it's a really interesting point.
As I look at this, I realize how dysfunctional this is. I would always mentally set aside Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings as my catch-up time, because at the end of every week, I always had a pile of things that I needed to catch up on. So I would, and I got to a point where I was feeling good about it. I wasn't complaining. I was feeling like, all right, I have these 3 mornings in the Saturday. I'm a morning person anyway, so I can get a lot done Saturday morning, and then whatever's left over, I'll get done either early Sunday morning or Sunday evening after everyone else has gone to bed. When you have that quiet time. But I realized what I was doing is, instead of addressing my root issue, instead I was compensating by finding these pockets of time. But as you know, it doesn't really matter, because nature abhors a vacuum. You fill those pockets, and then there's still more. It's like there will actually never be enough time if you don't get a hold of that characteristic, that desire to be, to always be the solution provider, the people pleaser, the doer, the person who will make it happen or make it better, whatever it might be. Now I have to say, I'm talking as if, hey, I've got that all solved. I don't have that all solved. I'm more aware, and I didn't mean to turn this into a personal therapy session, but I will tell you that just having this conversation with you once again reminds me, it's like taking the time to talk it through. And I'm thinking, I'm definitely better, but I'm not better. So now just having the permission to talk through it actually causes me to say, all right, I need to dial that up even further in terms of my willingness to push back, and find ways to say, not me, but here's how we can do it. Not me, but here's a path to get the work done that you need to get done, and find other venues, other outlets. And I know I've had many conversations with leaders who, when they really identify the stress that they're under, maybe one of the reasons they avoid talking about it is because they feel they can't do anything about it. They feel like there's nothing that will change or nothing that can change. So they just have to gut it out. But in reality, I'm sure in your experience, if you're creative enough, if you're committed enough, if you recognize the brutal reality of the situation, you can find solutions. You can find ways to evolve and be different.
Oh, you definitely can. I suppose that's why, some of those books and those methods around atomic habits and tiny habits and things like that have become so powerful. Look, I don't think there's like a right or wrong answer to anything. I think what I tend to use is attentional intelligence. I kind of just go, it's a Saturday or Sunday. Where do I want to put my attention today? And, and look, and sometimes my team, when I come in on a Monday, they do get a bit like, Sonia, did you actually take any time off on the weekend? Because they'll see some of the emails coming through and I'll go, yeah, I get it. Like, thanks for calling that. Like, because obviously they're kind of also a bit of, trying to keep me in check. Then saying that, I kind of go, all right, Sunday morning, do I need to work? Like, do I need to put my attention here? Is it more important for me to focus right now on self-care and doing things that bring me joy, or going painting or spending time with my cat? Or do I feel as though if I don't knock out this work in the next hour, it is going to distract me for the rest of the day? But if I decide to choose and put my attention to work for an hour, not to judge myself on it, not to spend then the rest of Sunday going, oh gosh, like, can't believe I worked, and oh bugger, I should, like, not. Does that make sense? Just going,
it does.
that was the choice I made. I feel good about it. I'm not going to judge it. Like, it was just, now I get to spend the rest of the Sunday doing it. If I decide to go, nah, work could make till Monday morning, that's a choice I made. So it's kind of like, whereas beforehand I used to think, oh, I really have to keep on top of things. And I'm like, look, I think as I've got older, I've kind of just gone, really, it's just work, like, I know it is important, but, I, and I did write a post about it, or an article about it on LinkedIn last month. My mum passed away last month, and it really got me thinking about mortality and my health. And I thought, work isn't everything, right? Like, it is part of who I am, but I've stopped getting my self-worth from work. I get my self-worth from what brings me happiness and joy and brings me contentment, and how I want to live my life. So I kind of just go, but in saying that, I love my work. So if I do decide to spend an hour doing work on a Saturday or Sunday morning, I just go, look, it's something that I love to do. So I'll knock it out of the park, and then, but I'm not gonna beat myself up about it. I'm just gonna go, it was where I decided to put my attention for now, and that is all great. And then just move on.
And it's the way to continue loving what you do, because if you don't get control of that, eventually you'll end up not loving what you do. It'll end up being a burden. I had some guidance a few weeks ago from my wife. We recently moved from in the US. We moved into a rural area. We found a hobby farm that had some space for growing crops. We had some horse stalls, about 10 acres of land, very isolated, no highway noise. It was exactly what we wanted, because we wanted the peace of that. And there was enough space so that, I brought my entire, office with me. So all the technology, high-speed internet access, everything. And so my workday actually didn't change at all. My workday is, start at 8 a.m. or approximately, and have all of my meetings, do all of my work. But the goal was at the end of the day to be able to shut things down and then walk out onto, acres and acres of land to experience a very rural, peaceful environment. And I did that for the first few weeks, and then the old habits began to seep back in. And there was a day where my wife leaned into my office because clearly the workday was done. It was around 6:30, and I really should have wrapped up. And she said, "So, what's going to happen if you just stop right now?" She said, "Is anybody going to die? Is anyone going to bleed? Is there going to be any like natural disaster? Like what will happen?" And I said, "Well, some emails will be late, and then a few other very minor things that in the scope of life." Absolutely, I said, "You're right. You are right. I work in a business. Luckily, I work in a business where nobody dies because I got my learning objectives wrong, or
Yeah.
nobody has a life-altering experience because a memo didn't come quite as soon as expected." And that perspective, now not everybody has that. Some people actually do have jobs where life-altering things can happen. But I think most of us in the modern work environment are have work lives where the downside is not nearly as as critical as we might subconsciously be telling ourselves that it is. So when you have these discussions within, whether it's a training session or some other type of discussion or a one-on-one discussion, do people share with you their personal strategies for reducing their stress? Do they have ideas, practical ideas for how they go about relieving the stress that they might be feeling or experiencing?
Yeah, it's always really interesting. I find most people come to us going, "Can you give us strategies?" Because the overwhelm and stress is, and I suppose like when I started many years ago, and I started working predominantly on construction sites with engineers and superintendents who are in very stressful environments, very long hours. I don't know how they do it. I'm hoping the industry will change around that. Stress was just paramount. It was kind of like part of, they were drinking the stress. Like it was just like kind of like, it was just, so I started studying neuroscience and did a diploma in neuroscience and leadership, and then understood like what's going on with the brain and the chemicals. So I find when we teach and coach people around how to mitigate stress or techniques, how to minimize stress, things like, there's a great TED talk around this, around how to make stress your friend. So people that see stress as a negative, or see it as debilitating, that is obviously going to cause a lot more harm to you than people that see stress as, "Oh, this is actually my body preparing myself." It's like in your DNA, right? Like I'm going to battle, like I've got this, like it's your kind of like, it also produces oxytocin. It produces those chemicals, like particularly when you share your stress, it's really helpful. When you go, it's giving me more courage. So the stress is giving me courage. So if you reframe the stress as not saying like, "I want lots of stress in my life," but reframe it as, "Okay, I'm stressed. This means that it's giving me that energy, momentum, that chemical." I think affirmations are a big one. So when I'm particularly feeling overwhelmed or stressed, the brain's pretty powerful. So I go, "I am powerful. I'm courageous." Visualization. So things like exercise is amazing. Going for walks or going for a run or going for a bike ride. I love going for bike rides, or going for a walk with you, like something to kind of break, or breathing is another thing. So deep breathing, journaling is a great one. So I do a lot of journaling. Anything that works for you. I think it's about what
Yeah.
works for you.
I think the physical aspect is really important because I find that I have a little timer on my desk, and it's got a 90-minute timer. And what I'll do is, if I'm working on a project and I've got my head deep into a project, I'll set the timer. And I find that if I give myself 90 minutes to engage, but then give myself a 10 or 15 minute break after that, now I can come back for another 90 minutes. But giving myself those regular breaks throughout the day, it is truly energizing if I do something with that break time. If I go for a walk, if I go walk out on the land, if I go downstairs and even just lifting weights for 5 or 10 minutes, just to get the blood pumping. So, change the environment, change the focus, but physicality definitely makes a difference. So I do think sometimes being primarily desk bound, I mean, a lot of us in the modern work world, this is our workspace. We sit at a desk and we work. And you probably remember the specific research. I know there's some report recently that indicated that just the position of sitting at the desk is itself physiologically a very stress-inducing sort of state to be in. And so when I find myself sitting at my desk for 2, 3 hours, 4 hours or longer at a time, of course the stress level rises. So when I can remind myself to take consistent breaks throughout the day, even 5 minutes, just to pause, disconnect. There's the deep breathing technique where you breathe in, you hold your breath, you breathe out slowly. And I know there are some, I can't remember the exact numbers, but you breathe in for 7 seconds, hold it for 4, breathe out for some number. I forget the numbers, but I know it's breathe in, hold it, breathe out. And it absolutely makes a difference if I can find the time, if I make the time to do that. I was telling you earlier that today was a particularly crazy day because Mondays are oftentimes my nonstop back-to-back days where from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. it is back-to-back. And I think we're all still getting used to this new world of online work because people do not feel bad about extending meetings. Like I about halfway through the day today, I could see them. I had another meeting coming up. I could see the clock ticking. Yeah. We were getting awfully close to the meeting time. And just as we were like 60 seconds away from the meeting when it was supposed to end, and the person leading the meeting says, "I want to be respectful of your time. I just have a few more items." So he said, "I want to be respectful of your time," but he took 5 more minutes. And so then we're all 5 minutes late. And then it was one of those meetings where you can't really extract yourself. So I've got the next meeting pinging me, wanting to know where am I? And it was one of those days. And I think we're all going to have to get better at respecting the boundaries of others in this world, where if it's a 1 hour meeting, you end it on time or early. There's no rule against me ending a meeting early if you've actually accomplished the objectives of the meeting. But I agree with you. Those work for me, and they would not necessarily work for everyone else. It's a matter of finding the things that work for you. I got inspired by a woman who I was having online meetings with once a week, and she had a guitar, a mandolin guitar, and I could see.
Wow.
And I said, "Well, so do you play the guitar?" And she said, "Yeah, I do." She said, "I don't play it well," but she said, "What I'll do is I'll take a break a few times a day, and I'll just shut down and I'll just play a tune." She said, "There's something for me about just playing a tune on the mandolin guitar that works for her." So I have a guitar. I've had a guitar for 20 years, and I've had the intent of learning to play the guitar for 20 years. Yeah. And I thought, well, I'll give that a try. Did not work because all it did for me was remind me, I cannot play. I can't even play a few chords. I would. Yeah. And so that technique worked for her, was fantastic for her. Not so much for me. So when you are feeling stress, what are the things? I imagine you mentioned painting, or I'm sure there are other things in your life that you do to reduce stress and anxiety.
Oh gosh, what a great question. I do a lot of power posing. So I do a lot of power posing. Obviously, as
I
you
got
would
to ask, okay, what is power posing?
Oh, Amy Cuddy, look at her TED talk. It's about making yourself bigger. For, if you think about animals when they're trying to get power,
Uh-huh.
they make themselves bigger. So it's kind of like stretching yourself out for a few minutes or doing the Wonder Woman pose. It actually increases testosterone and decreases
Uh-huh.
cortisol. So making yourself bigger for a few minutes. So every time I'm doing a keynote speech, like if I'm getting on stage and, if there's thousands of people on stage in particular, I do my power posing on just behind stage to get myself like, obviously I have adopted a black cat that loves to follow me around. So I make sure I spend a lot of time with her. So obviously patting cats or animals is amazing. I'd have to say my go-to is my painting now. Like since I used to love painting when I was little. And then late last year, we had a bit of a knock in our business, and you get knocks in business. Gosh, like being in business is really tough, right? It's like you work a lot of hours. There is a lot of overwhelm, and we got a knock, and I do take things like I'm very sensitive, and I got so upset about it, and then I started to go, oh, I felt like such a failure, and I went, what am I doing? Like I'm getting so much of my self-worth from my business. And what am I doing here? Like this is causing a lot of stress for me. Like, so when the business wasn't doing as well as I'd hoped, I took it about me not doing well. So I started to make it the same. And I hear that a lot with people that I work with. Oh, my career's not going in the direction I wanted, or my job. Therefore, I'm a failure. And therefore, I'm like in the stress that it's causing them. And I thought, you know what? I'm not my business. My business, I love it. It's part of who I am. But then I started to think about what I love to do when I was little. And I thought, what did I do? And I thought, oh, I painted a lot. So I just started. In the first few, that was actually one of my first ones. I'm actually much better. I've got them hanging up downstairs. And people come around now and they see it and they go, are these your paintings? And I'm like, yeah. And then they go, you need to get these in a gallery. And I'm like, and I did lots of stuff up paintings, but it was the process of the painting. So it's just like, for me, it was like, okay, can feel it. I just need to get into it in my garage. I just thought I just need to get a canvas and I just need to like something to help me self-regulate. But again, you just have to find your thing.
And to make to make yourself so much more than just the work. I am guilty of making myself all about the work, and almost compartmentalizing. I have my family and I have my work, and I definitely have emphasized work way too much at various points in my life. I did want to mention, I'm going to reach down off camera for a moment.
Yeah.
This is one of my stress relievers. I have these 30-pound weights. So I have two of them below my desk. However, the challenge is they're like under the desk, and I have to remind myself that they exist because you do power posing. Although I'm going to look that up because it sounds like a great idea. If I am just having like even 5 minutes in between meetings, just pulling these out and doing a couple of curls, just for me, that's like my version of, I suppose, power posing, in that I just feel so much more powerful, particularly if I do it to the point of failure, like do it so that I can't do it anymore, and like that moment where you are stressing that that 20th curl or that 15th curl, and you just can't lift it any further. That, for me, holding that pose for just a few seconds longer than I was able to in the past. It's just a brief moment, but it does definitely change my state. When I go back to the next meeting or the next thing, whatever that might be.
I'm going to go downstairs and get mine and bring them up. I am so going to do that. I love that.
So what I've been thinking though is I need to put them on my desk, but I don't really have enough space on my desk. I need to find a way to make them just a little more visible, because with them under the desk, I forget, and I would like to remind myself, just even if it was just once a day, doing that is helpful. Can we talk about?
Sorry,
Go
Dan.
ahead.
I think what I'd love to see, right? If you're in a meeting with someone and they're giving you the shit, is you bring them out. You go, right,
Yeah.
okay, like
Yeah.
bring it on. Like,
Yes. I do
we
have a
need some weights here. I'll respond after I've lifted some weights.
I have a colleague who uses a standing desk, and most of the
Oh,
time he stands at his desk. And
yeah.
I was inspired. I went and I bought a standing desk, and I bought a motorized one so that it can, move up and down very
Yeah.
smoothly. But honestly, without a reminder, I rarely use it, and I should use it. I should. Again, it's one of those things where there are lots of things that I know would be helpful, and I need to find ways to remind myself, once a day, twice a day, spend a bit of time standing at the desk, and I probably could do it while I'm, doing the curls. Can we talk about vulnerability for a second? Because it's easy. You and I we're talking about this, and I'm thinking about that leader who is used to being perceived sort of at the top of the mountain, whether it's a frontline leader of a team of 8 or a mid-level leader of 30 or so folks, or a large organizational leader where really he or she feels that they've got thousands of people who look up to them and for whom they have to be they have to be everything. I think all of those leaders um, are uncomfortable with vulnerability, are uncomfortable saying, hey, I have a challenge here. I'm trying to work on myself. And yet perversely, when a leader, and the higher you are up on the ladder, the bigger this impact is. When a leader is willing to say, I have an issue, I'm working on myself, it can be so inspirational to other people because it gives other people permission to work on themselves, permission to share maybe what's less than perfect about them right now. But I don't know that that's common in the in the modern work culture, but I've definitely seen it have dramatic impact for many people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you're vulnerable, like it just shows like you're human, right? Like I'm a big one around the vulnerability space. I mean, I know Brené Brown is, lives and breathes this space as well. And a lot of
Mhm.
people read and follow her work. That I think it's about vulnerability in action, right? It's espousing it. And every coaching session and workshop or program that, particularly that I deliver, I share pieces and elements of myself.
Mhm.
And, even last week, I had to run 2 women in leadership programs. And last Monday, I was devastated. I had all these women that were waiting for me to come and deliver it, and I had to cancel it because I got so sick. And so when and that was in Brisbane, and then I had to fly to Melbourne to deliver another one. But I was trying to get myself better to deliver the one in Melbourne, and I just was vulnerable. I turned up, apologized for being unwell, but things happen. We're human, and it's very rare that happens. But when I shared why I felt that I got sick and what was going on in my life, just to give them some context around,
Mhm.
hey, like in Australia, there is things like there's a lot of things happening here because of the flu, and we're just coming out of winter. We're in autumn now. So we're in spring now, sorry. And when I shared what was going on in my life and said, look, I'm going to show you some vulnerability here. This is what's been going on in my life in the last few weeks. And I think my body was kind of feeling the stress of all that. Even though I was taking care of myself and like even my nutrition and like making sure that I was practicing a lot of the things that I advocate, is sometimes the body just goes, yep, this is a bit too much. And I got really sick. But when I showed the vulnerability of what had actually happened, people in the room were like looking at me going, oh, wow, like, thank you so much for sharing that. I didn't just show up and go, hey, yeah, look, I missed a workshop
Yeah.
because I was well, let's get into it. I kind of said, look, and I think as well, it gave everybody permission to also be vulnerable. I mean, even I was running a leadership program, and it was for an engineering company. Predominantly, it was all men in the room. And I said to the COO, I said, can you come in and share like a little bit around leadership and how you see leadership? And maybe if you could share some vulnerability, that would be really cool. And he looked at me and went, what do you mean by vulnerability? Like, what do you want me to share? And I said, well, maybe just share a story about yourself. He came in like, and this is a big, tough, very, very strong man. And he sat in a chair and he shared his life story about how when he was younger, he was the eldest and his dad passed away, and it really impacted the family. So it really impacted his school because his schooling and education, because he had to go and get several jobs to help financially with the family. And he started to get a little emotional. Like I was sitting at the back of the room going, oh, and he started, I think, sharing, and I don't think he realized he was going to get emotional, but when he was sharing his story, and then he went, oh, I wasn't expecting to get emotional. And then everyone in the room was looking at him, and I thought, wow. And everyone was like, thank you so much. And he left. And then I looked at all these men and I said, how are you feeling about what just happened? Like there were probably 16 men in the room. 4 of them started to share their story, and they started to have tears in their eyes. And I think it gave them permission to go, oh, actually, this is actually okay. Like, this is good. And I said, yeah, this is great. Like, you need to talk about, so does that make sense? I think it can help others, give them that space to show
Absolutely. And many of us, and I think it's true of men and women, but in particular, men have an issue there. We're not sure how safe the space is going to be. So when a senior leader models that, and we see, okay, this is a safe space, you can imagine that being a very compelling event. I know you travel a lot, and travel can really wear you down, and sometimes if we're in good health, we have the ability to manage a certain level of stress and to do it productively. And then if our health gets impacted either by travel or lack of sleep or getting sick or whatever other factors might be, suddenly we can't handle the same level of stress that we would normally be able to handle. And I think travel is interesting because for those of us who travel a lot, I know some people view travel as a joy. They love it. They love the whole experience. For me, it's a chore and it's a challenge. But I have one tip to share with folks, and I learned this several years ago. This was shared. Actually, I have 2 tips now that because the same person shared 2 tips with me. I'll give you the small one first. She said to me, first of all, you pack your clothes, of course. When you arrive in your hotel room, run your shower on hot and put any of the clothes that you're going to wear in the next day or 2 in the bathroom and let the shower steam them. So you'll steam out all of your wrinkles and just give them a good 5 minutes of steam and then let them cool off. And she said, it's the best time saver I've learned in terms of being able to then go to your various meetings and not have wrinkled clothes. So that's a little thing. But her other tip was, she said, bring your pillowcase from home, not your pillow, because most of us, you can't travel with a pillow and people would judge you if you come with your pillow. But she said, bring your pillowcase, put your pillowcase over the hotel pillow. And when you go to sleep, your subconscious mind will it'll smell like home. So as you're sleeping, you will be, because she said the reason most people, when they travel, the first night in a new hotel room, when your body is trying to go to sleep, your unconscious mind is feeling like, I don't know this place. I don't know where there might be danger. Who knows? And so your body, you're getting used to this new place. It's why you don't sleep well the first night, maybe a little better. And by the 3rd night, your subconscious mind has figured out, okay, this is okay. This is safe. So she said it's a way of tricking your sleeping mind to know this is home. This is comfortable. And it's the strangest thing, but it works. It absolutely works. So I wouldn't take your whole pillow because people will judge you, but just bring the pillowcase and it works just fine.
I'm definitely going to. So where do you hang out? Where do you hang the clothes? So
well, it's it was easy. Like when this was shared with me 10-ish years ago, it was easier. They make it harder now because it, so there used to be like bars across where I could hang the clothes. Now I have to get pretty clever engineering wise. So what I end up doing is actually inside the shower, I put the clothes on hangers, I use the hotel's hangers,
Yeah.
and I flip them in reverse and I hang them on the inside. And then I focus the shower nozzle away from where the clothes are. So you get a little steam going, and then let them get them just steamed enough, and then pull them out and let them fully dry off, wherever you normally hang the clothes in the
Okay.
shower. So,
All right, I'm going to give it a crack. Because I've got a lot of travel in the next few months. So I will let you know how that goes. And the pillow. I'll definitely let you know about the pillow.
So I'm thinking next time we have a conversation, one thing I want to do is I would love to actually see one of your paintings. If you would, imagine, I mean, there are people hopefully around the world watching this podcast, and I'm sure we would all love to see one of your paintings, in its full glory. So just think about it. I don't want to add stress to your life by considering that, but when anyone puts any energy into artistic expression, I think there's a lot of value in that, and I just find myself naturally curious. So as we're wrapping up, let me just first of all thank you, Sonia. Honestly, I know how busy you are. I know how valuable your time is. I know the value of your insights and your expertise. So I do not take this for granted. It is very, very much appreciated. And I'm hoping that people who actually view this podcast are willing to take a look at your books. First Comes Courage, Just Rocket, The Leadership Attitude, because again, I think there is so much that you bring to really any engagement. So very much appreciated. And let's just plan on talking again sometime soon. But thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. You're definitely going to be on my podcast very soon. It's been an absolute honor. And thank you so much.
And let's pick an equally challenging topic. We'll have to think about what that might be. But I think we can definitely pick something that doesn't get enough talk, and then share our thoughts about that. So thank you. Have a lovely rest of your day in Brisbane.
Too.
I'll have a rest of my evening in the States, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks again.